Climate change and the challenging macroeconomic environment are contributing to a growing protection gap. How can insurers help customers build resilience? What actions can we take to reduce the protection gap, both for climate and life-related events, and promote inclusive growth? To help answer these questions, I'm meeting two leaders in the European insurance industry. Alison Martin, EMEA CEO at Zurich Insurance Group, and Urs Baertschi, Global CEO for Property and Casualty at Swiss Re. The protection gap has been a topic for some time, but I think also the macroeconomic environment that we're seeing this year, combined with some of the climate change impacts, is certainly leading us to believe that the protection gap is growing. And by here I mean protection gap in the broadest sense, so protection from natural disasters. That gap is clearly growing due to both increases in exposures, but also an increase in the frequency of natural disaster events. The economic environment of volatility and high inflation is also leading to savings gaps for retirement increasing dramatically. So latest studies have suggested that the global protection gap is over $1 trillion. So the question then comes up, the role that the insurance sector has to play in providing societal value starts to go far beyond just philanthropic endeavors and far more into leaning into closing that protection gap. Alison, can you share a little bit about how you're thinking about this question at Zurich, driving this increase in the societal value of the sector?
Yeah, sure. So our ambition is to be one of the most responsible and impactful businesses in the world. And whilst that doesn't mean we don't want to do philanthropic ventures through the Zurich Foundation, which I'm very proud of, absolutely it means your core business is to deliver value to all stakeholders. And that does mean we need to do everything we can to close protection gaps. So whether it's thinking about how we use technology and risk insights to grow protection pies rather than seek to narrow them, I think our role is to seek to insure as many as we can rather than continue to select the few, whether they be the wealthy few in the case of savings business, or whether they be the few who happen to live in areas which are less prone to climate change. Where we've seen over the last 5 years such a significant rise in the frequency and severity of climate impacts. And at long last, the insurance industry, we've started to be able to actually put together our traditional CAT models, which, as everyone knows, are backward-looking, with the GCM models, so the circulatory models, which actually look at climate, to be able to say what's going to happen into the future. You put on top of that what happens with artificial intelligence and the ability to look at how can we give customers insight into what they can do to help reduce the probability and the impact when these events happen. And you start to be able to imagine a different world of insurance, a world where it's not just about providing a risk transfer, but it's about actually supporting resilience.
So that's a really interesting point, because when you talk about climate change, I think a lot of what you hear in the press seems to focus much more on what the sector is not doing. So areas where the sector is withdrawing cover because the risks are too high and the prices are not adequate to cover them. I guess specifically on that point about climate, how do you see the role of prevention within that? And how do you see the role of price signaling, which I think is also something that's important for the sector to continue to play a role in?
So for insurance, there has to be a possibility that you're not going to have a claim. So I think I put that as a baseline standard. But insurance also has to be affordable. Yeah. So we can't have a situation where the cost of insurance rises so great that no one can actually afford to buy it. That's not in our industry's interests.
Yeah.
So then it becomes about how do you use risk insights to inform. So whether that's informing a business or whether it's informing a local authority or national authorities about options that are available to build, whether it's flood defences for individual businesses, whether it be for rivers, for broader communities, whether it's to look for ways to address heat or drought. I mean, for every peril, there are opportunities to actually mitigate and enable businesses and citizens to continue to thrive. But you need the risk insights. And that's why things like AI and technology can be so exciting, because they can help speed up the process by which we can get those insights where they're needed to businesses and to local authorities.
Whereas Anything you'd like to add around this, around the role of the reinsurance sector in particular in helping to address some of these questions of protection gap and lack of coverage?
Reinsurers are fundamentally global, and we get a lot of data from all the markets. And as a result of that, what we can contribute back into our industry, and then as a result of that into society, is around risk awareness, risk management, and then ultimately risk protection as well. So when we take all of this data, we can actually play back to the various societies around the world what is happening at an aggregated level, right? And that actually offers great insights. Out of that can come risk management. And whether this is for individuals who learn more about their health, whether this is for companies who know more about what they need to do to protect themselves better, or the public sector as well, of how they can actually use preventative measures to improve societal resilience at a local level. At the end, of course, there is risk protection or risk transfer as well, where we can insure and reinsure some of these risks. And here around, very much like what Alison said as well about growing the pie, we're very passionate about shrinking the protection gap and innovating in new products. For example, the parametric space, together with the public sector, has been an interesting area where, because they have already paid out in some instances, been able to reach a lot of people who otherwise actually would not have gotten anything.
We talked at the start about this kind of protection and retirement savings gap for life insurers, which I think is a really important challenge as well. And we are starting to see regulation in Europe moving down the direction of trying to open up options to address that gap with the retail investment strategy. How are you thinking about that theme at Zurich, working together within that regulatory environment to provide solutions to customers for bridging that gap?
So I think things like the retail investment strategy are super important for Europe on multiple levels, not least for EU citizens to improve the potential they have for savings, but also to improve European competitiveness, which against markets like the US, the last 10 years of trajectory has not been good for Europe. So encouraging more individual citizen participation in the capital markets is really critical. And what RIS does is enables that through a number of different means. I mean, we're very big supporters of the significant push for digitization, because I think that fits with trying to enable customers to actually do more self-serve, have more transparency. There's a lot of questions around what's the role of distribution in the retail investment strategy. But I think at the moment we're in a situation where the EU citizens don't have the financial literacy to wake up every day thinking, I must save for my retirement. So whilst that's the case, the role of distribution is critical. Help customers to get the advice they need to address the risks they face, and then have some tailored propositions that actually work for them. Now, digitization and transparency, that all helps give an overview of what are the options and what's going to work best for them. So we are very much in favor.
Thank you so much, and thank you both for joining me today for this fantastic conversation.